Good morning, and welcome to our April 16th forum. Before we go into our scheduled forum that we had prepared for today, we'd like to talk a little about what happened in Boston at the marathon yesterday, the devastating events that occurred and the things that the people faced, and not only during the bombings but afterwards and following today. Senator, would you like to make some comments?
Oh, thank you. And it's nice seeing you this morning, and I just feel horrible for the families, what they had to go through yesterday, and my sympathies go out to all the injured who had to deal with the events yesterday. And watching it, it's such a surreal feeling just to see that happening here in Boston, or in our country. I had the pleasure of going to Israel last December, and you get to see what the people deal with there, basically living in a state of war every day of their lives, and this is something you don't think is going to happen here. Even though we had 9/11 many years ago, I think a lot of us have, not that you put it in the back of your mind, but you just feel much safer than we did many years ago. And to have that happen again, it's just horrific. And again, my sympathies go out to the families who had to deal with some people, the losses that were incurred of lives and the injuries.
In watching the TV this morning, they mentioned that there are 3 people dead and 141 injured. That's the latest toll. And that some of the runners were on their way back home to Chicago this morning, and there were a couple of Muslims on the plane. They felt uncomfortable. The plane taxied back to the runway, to the gate, and they were removed before they proceeded on. So we're going to have to go through some displeasure until some of the things are found out as to who caused this, what caused it, and see that hopefully that it doesn't happen again. And it's not only Boston where it occurred. Everyone is on alert in all the major cities throughout the country.
And I think one thing we have to be very careful of, if we look at some of the tragic events that have happened in this country, they've not all resulted from international terrorist groups. It's sad to say on some occasions that we've had domestic terrorists cause these type of events, these tragic events. So, we have to be open-minded and remember that, the investigation is ongoing. We have to let the authorities complete their investigation, and obviously people should be careful, but keep an open mind as to not prejudging any certain groups over the next weeks, days, until the investigation has been completed. But it's just tragic. If you think, how long is it? It's been over 100 years that the Boston Marathon has been taking place, and we haven't had any events like this to occur. And hopefully, some of the events that the law enforcement community did take by shutting down all cell phone coverage service, maybe that helped deter some of the other devices that were dismantled from going off. You're watching the news and you saw people walking around, and they were saying because they had to shut down the cell phone service, you had families people who had been running the race that couldn't contact their family members who were in the city that were waiting for them. It's just so many. I think everyone takes for granted the logistics that goes into planning these types of events, and I don't know how you would actually develop safety precautions when you have such a massive event that's throughout the city. You can't have checkpoints at at every intersection, checking people's bags, and one of the best things about our country is all the civil liberties that we have, all the protections we have, and it's events like this that actually that people exploit those liberties that we do have in this country.
Thank you, Senator. This past Saturday, the Senate debated legislation to help finance transportation in the Commonwealth. Can you talk to us about this legislation?
Yes. After an unusual day, a long day on Saturday, I don't remember the last time that I know in the 4 years that I've been in office, now going to my 5th year, we've never gone into session on a Saturday. So this was very unusual for the Senate to go into session on Saturday. But the Senate passed legislation to finance the state's transportation infrastructure. The bill will dedicate close to $800 million to transportation by the fiscal year 2018. The transportation infrastructure of the Commonwealth is vital to the economic growth and well-being of the state. This legislation will help create jobs, invest in overdue improvements to our infrastructure. These investments will ensure that Massachusetts will remain competitive in the future.
Last week, Senate President Teresa Murray and House of Representatives Speaker Robert DeLeo unveiled a $500 million transportation plan, which the House passed on Monday, April 8th, in response to Governor Patrick's $1.9 billion proposal. The Senate proposal that was passed included an amendment that you sponsored. The amendment requires the Inspector General of Massachusetts to conduct an investigation of the MBTA's procedure and policies regarding enforcing a fare evasion. Following evasion, the Inspector General must file a report with the legislature regarding the findings and recommendations for improving fare collection enforcement. You also filed 3 other amendments to the bill, which were not included in the final bill. These included eliminating an increase in the gas tax, raising the fares each year based on the increase in the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, for the state's public transportation, and to install tolls on routes 93 on the New Hampshire border, and to reinstate tolls on exit 16 on the Massachusetts Turnpike. The bill includes non-tax revenue savings and new revenue sources, such as it amends the Commonwealth's transportation funds to dedicate revenues generated from the sales tax on motor vehicles to transportation. It establishes own source revenue and savings targets for Massachusetts Department of Transportation, known as MassDOT, and the Massachusetts Bay Transportation Authority, the MBTA. It requires MassDOT to classify and fund the salaries and benefits of employees as operating expenditures by June 30th, 2016. And it requires MassDOT to submit a progress report by August 1st, 2013. Increase in the cigarette excise tax by $1 per pack, the increases of the excise tax on smokeless tobacco to 160% of the wholesale price, and it increases the excise tax on cigars and smoking tobacco to 40% of the wholesale price.
It also increases the gas tax from 21 cents to 24 cents per gallon, and this is the first increase in 20 years to the gas tax. Beginning January 1, 2015, it increases the gas tax annually by the increase if there is an increase in the CPI. Now, just so people realize that this also could mean if the cost of living goes down, then also that could result in a reduction. And also, I realize that doesn't too often happen, but this was a way of trying to provide a sustainable revenue source for our infrastructure needs in the Commonwealth. One concern I'd always had with the gas tax is that I always looked at it as a diminishing tax, because as we right now promote more fuel efficiency, that in turn means obviously less gas being purchased and less revenue coming in to fund our infrastructure. So this will hopefully provide some stability to that revenue source. A House and Senate Conference Committee will now look at the two bills, look at the differences, and try to work them out and send them to the governor's office for his hopeful approval. I don't know if people over the last week or 2 weeks have been seeing a lot of the media where the governor wasn't happy with the piece of legislation that was put out by the House representatives, because the governor's proposal, again, was $1.9 billion. And the House bill is, the framework and a lot of it is similar to what we passed. There are some slight differences, but the governor was initially opposed to the House version. And when we were, prior to us going into debate on this, he had come out, well, initially after the House passed it, he had come out and said that if we passed the same version, he would veto it. As we get closer to the date, as we get closer to Saturday, the governor's position had softened quite a bit. So we're still curious to see what he will do, as far as whether he will, after the bill comes out of conference, whether he will sign the bill or not sign the bill.
Recently you were reappointed as the Senate Chairman to the Committee on Higher Education. Can you tell us about the priority for higher education during the current session?
Well, the public higher education system in Massachusetts is critical to ensuring continued innovation in the Commonwealth's economy. The work being accomplished on the campuses of the state's 15 community colleges are crucial to workforce development and attracting new businesses to the state. I applaud the Patrick administration for their strong commitment to these campuses by providing new investments in our community colleges in his fiscal year 2014 budget.
In the governor's budget proposal, the Commonwealth's 15 community colleges provide a wide variety of affordable and highly effective educational and career programs to prepare students of all ages for both the job market and future academic study. Goals that remained a priority of yours as chairman of the Committee on Higher Education: 1, creating a 21st century workforce that is responsive to local and state economic needs; 2, reducing unemployment across the state; and 3, closing the achievement gap. The governor's budget has set forth efforts to reform the community college system by increasing accountability and strengthening collaboration to improve both academic and workforce training outcomes.
The Department of Higher Education and the community colleges have worked to collaborate both internally with the Executive Office of Labor and Workforce Development and the Executive Office of Housing and Economic Development, as well as externally with local employers, to ensure that the workforce initiatives at the campuses meet the needs of the students and the local economy.
The governor's FY 2014 budget includes new investments of $2.3 million that will build on the following elements of the 2013 budget, including new scholarship funding for in-demand careers, rapid response grants, which give our community colleges and potential employers the opportunity to develop career-specific curricula based on the needs of these employers.
The Community College Workforce Grant Advisory Committee, a committee which I am a member of, has promoted the development of workforce training programs in partnerships with the Commonwealth businesses and industry and other educational and training institutions, labor organizations, and other organizations supporting workforce development.
The FY 2014 budget seeks to continue to advance these efforts through the investment of $6.1 million, including $2.3 million in new funding at DHE that consolidates the FY 2013 initiatives of in-demand scholarships, rapid response grants, and the Community College Workforce Grant Advisory Committee.
This consolidation of funds will allow DHE, Department of Higher Education, greater flexibility in meeting the workforce development needs of the community colleges and the students and employers served by the community colleges.
The opportunity, value, and life advancement offered by the community colleges has been recognized by the residents of Massachusetts as full-time equivalent enrollment increased 32% from 2006 to 2011. Governor Patrick has proposed to invest in an additional $20 million in new funding for community colleges, or 9% more than FY 2013 funding levels.
This new investment will be allocated to the campuses through a new formula that serves to accomplish the goals established by the administration and ensure that all campuses receive at least the same levels of funding as in fiscal year 2013. Just a little bit more on this formula. I think if we remember last year, it's a point we were talking about in the budget process, how we did a reform of the community colleges, and we actually established a performance funding metrics. Well, that's what this $20 million is the result of. When I first got the assignment as the chair of higher education, when we looked at the funding of the 15 community colleges, the top 5 community colleges with full-time enrollments were also the bottom five as far as funding levels. And I think it was Bristol Community College, Quinsigamond Community College, Middlesex Community College, Bunker Hill Community College, and forgetting the 5th one. So when you look at that and you're trying to determine the appropriate level of funding, to have the 5 colleges, community colleges with the highest enrollment levels being the lowest funded. Obviously, the old ways of funding these schools, which basically was whoever had the most political clout, had to be restructured or changed. So we established, we actually hired through the Department of Education, we hired a consultant that actually came up with the performance funding, and it has resulted in this $20 million in funding, with the bottom 5 now actually being compensated more appropriately for the level of services that they are providing. Although I agree with the governor that we should make our community colleges a priority, as they are a beacon of success for workforce development, I am mindful of the proposed increases in tax revenue to fund this budget. Again, as we were talking about the legislation that was just passed over the weekend, that was dealing strictly with transportation. This is one problem when the governor put out his $1.9 billion tax proposal. He tied education, K through 12, early education, higher ed, and transportation into a large package, where we were getting correspondence from people that over the weekend on this transportation bill that were telling us to vote on it based on education funding. So there was a lot of confusion as far as where we were going with the transportation bill, his bill. So that was another reason, which I'm happy we did it. That we actually separated transportation out from the other priorities that we need to focus on. So the needs of our higher education community and our other K through 12 and early ed will hopefully be addressed in the budget coming up in the next several weeks.
As we're talking about higher education in Massachusetts, the Committee on Higher Education held a hearing with the Secretary of Education and the Commissioner of Higher Education. Can you tell us a little about this hearing?
Well, on Wednesday, March 13th, myself, along with the members of the committee, held a hearing at the Massachusetts State House regarding higher education in the Commonwealth. Massachusetts Secretary of Education Matthew H. Malone and Commissioner of Higher Education Richard Freeland spoke and answered questions from the committee on issues concerning higher education institutions in Massachusetts. The hearing also covered issues related to the fiscal year 2014 budget. As chairman of the committee, the Joint Committee on Higher Education. These hearings are helpful. They give members of the committee a greater insight on higher education in the state as we prepare legislation and budget amendments.
The conversation on the needs and future of higher education in the Commonwealth must continue to ensure that our higher education institutes remain affordable and accessible.
Furthermore, the committee also held hearings with UMass, University of Massachusetts, the state university systems, community colleges, and spoke on specific matters regarding each of their campuses.
Last month, Governor Patrick signed into law legislation that you co-sponsored. Can you talk to us about this piece of legislation?
Yeah, Friday on March 8th, Governor Patrick recently signed into legislation to ensure the safety for social workers in the Commonwealth. And again, it's a bill which I co-sponsored.
The law requires all programs providing direct services to clients who are operated by, licensed, certified, or funded by Health and Human Services to have workplace violence prevention and a crisis response plan. Plans must be updated at least annually for social workers, human service workers, volunteers, and all other employees. Programs that do not have safety training in place shall require their employees to enroll in safety training, which will be developed and offered by the Executive Office of Health and Human Services.
More than 1/2 of social workers in the Commonwealth have been physically assaulted in a work-related incident. Social workers provide a crucial and fundamental service to residents of the Commonwealth. This legislation is critical to ensure the protection of social workers as they continue to provide services for our most vulnerable populations.
The Massachusetts Operational Services Division has an upcoming event that will be taking place at the DCU Center. Can you share with us some information regarding this upcoming event?
Yes, on Thursday, May 2nd, the DCU Center in Worcester will be hosting the 2013 Mass Buy Expo, the largest business-to-government event in the Commonwealth. The event is the largest statewide event specifically for public purchasing and procurement officials, program managers, and contract users. This year, the Mass Buy Expo will have 6 new improvements.
380 exit booths, 40 more than in 2012, improved government resource center, a conveniently located in the DCU Center atrium, admission to e-procurement university, an on-site education pavilion about the Commonwealth's new e-procurement system implementation project scheduled to replace Compass in December 2013. Buy It Now campaign, limited time discounts from participating statewide contractors, free entry to over 15 educational workshops, free breakfast, lunch, and parking. For more information, go to register for this event. Visit www.mass.gov/OSD/massbuys. Many of our viewers wish to stay up to date on the matters concerning the district and the Commonwealth, and there are ways for our constituents to stay informed.
Yes, thanks for asking that. I have a Facebook, Twitter, and monthly newsletter to ensure that constituents are given important information regarding the 2nd Worcester District and the Commonwealth, and also any matters dealing with economic development, education, anything that we think of is going to be of importance to the people of the district, or even some of our municipalities. If there are grant programs coming out, I try to make it as informative as possible, because we get so many requests from constituents regarding a variety of issues, that anything that we can put out there to make it easier so people don't have to call our office and they can get a referral, That's one thing actually I have found since I've been in office, is that there are so many resources that the state has, but the state just does a horrible job at marketing. And I guess rightfully so. We don't have we don't put a lot of our resources or revenues that we get into marketing. We create the program. We try to answer a need from the constituents, but then after it's created, there's just not a lot of advertisement to the people saying, look, this is what we have in place. I believe strongly ensuring that constituents are kept up to date. This is why I've established my Facebook and my Twitter accounts and a newsletter. Constituents who wish to follow me on Facebook may follow me by visiting. For Twitter users, I may be followed by visiting @Sen Mike Moore. And
any constituent who wishes to receive a monthly e-newsletter may sign up by visiting the Senator's website at electmikemore.com, and you may email Michael Moore at masssenate.gov.
Furthermore, if any constituents are planning to visit my State House office, I'd like to inform you that I have been assigned a new office. And I'm now located in room 109B on the first floor of the State House. And again, phone calls, if you want to call the office, the number is 617-722-1485. And again, it's nice seeing you again this month. Hope everyone had an enjoyable Patriots Day. And again, my deepest sympathies go out to the families of everyone affected yesterday by the tragic events.
Same for me. I express sympathies on behalf of myself and the citizens of the town of Auburn, on the people that ran into the problems that we had yesterday in Boston. And looking forward to seeing you on the 21st of May, which I believe is town election day.
Oh, and actually also, just a reminder to the voters of Auburn that on April 30th is the primary for the special election for the U.S. Senate seat. So just people can put that in the calendar. Again, you always hear a lot of voters criticizing the election, or that they don't, the choices they have to make in the general election. Well, that's why the primary is so important. The winners of the primaries are the individuals that move on to the second stage. So if you're not happy with the results of the primary, if you didn't vote, then it's hard to criticize the end product. So if you just remember, please go out there and vote. Utilize your right to vote. It really is very important to the process.
Thank you very much, and we'll see you next month.